Left alone after her husband abandoned her years ago, she still ended up in the Hall of Fame. Dear viewers, welcome to our channel. Subscribe to receive more stories every day. The winter wind howled outside the modest apartment, its icy fingers clawing at the windows as Olivia sat hunched over the battered piano her mother had gifted her years ago. The room was silent, save for the faint melody she struggled to compose. Her fingers trembled, not from the cold but from the void Daniel had left. It had been 6 months since Daniel walked out of their lives. He hadn't left with anger, nor did he slam the door behind him. Instead, his departure was as sharp as a blade, quick, clean, and utterly devastating. He stood by the doorway that day, his suitcase in hand, eyes darting anywhere but at her. "This isn't the life I signed up for, Olivia," he said. "I can't keep pretending you'll ever make it with this music thing. It's time I live for myself." And just like that, he was gone. He left her with nothing but the echoes of his words and the crushing weight of his absence. At first, Olivia tried to drown herself in anger. How could the man who had vowed to support her dreams, no matter how distant they seemed, turn his back when the struggle got too real? But anger quickly morphed into desperation as reality bore down on her. Bills piled up on the kitchen table, mocking her with their urgency. The fridge hummed, nearly empty, while her 2 children, 5-year-old Noah and 2-year-old Emily, clung to her for warmth and reassurance. Through the darkness, her piano became her lifeline. It was a clunky, out-of-tune relic, but it was all she had left of her once bright dreams. Each night after putting the children to bed, Olivia sat before the instrument, playing until her fingers ached and her tears soaked the ivory keys. Music, she realized, was her only solace. One evening, as she played an aching melody, a neighbor knocked on the door. Mrs. Hill, a widow in her 60s with a penchant for lavender perfume, stepped in, her eyes misty. "I couldn't help but hear," Mrs. Hill said softly. "That song. It's like it spoke to my soul. You have a gift, Olivia." For the first time in months, Olivia allowed herself to feel pride. Encouraged by Mrs. Hill's words, she began recording snippets of her compositions on an old cassette player. Though the melodies were rough, each one told a story of loss, of resilience, and of hope. She didn't know what she would do with them, but creating was better than succumbing to despair. Then came the letter. A local music competition was calling for submissions from undiscovered talent. The grand prize was $10,000 and the opportunity to perform in front of influential industry professionals. Olivia hesitated. The last time she dared to dream, she had lost everything. But then she thought of Noah and Emily, asleep in their shared bed, their tiny faces illuminated by the moonlight. She entered. The day of the competition arrived, and Olivia felt like an imposter among the polished musicians warming up backstage. She wore a second-hand dress, its hem hastily sewn to hide a tear. The piano she practiced on for weeks at a community center was no match for the grand Steinway she was about to play. When her name was called, Olivia walked onto the stage, her heart pounding in her chest. The audience loomed before her, a sea of strangers waiting to judge her worth. She sat down, closed her eyes, and let her fingers dance over the keys. The music started tentatively, like the hesitant steps of someone learning to walk again. Then it grew bolder, weaving a tapestry of sorrow and strength. As the melody soared, Olivia lost herself in the story she was telling, a story of betrayal, resilience, and rebirth. When the final note faded into silence, the audience remained still for a beat before erupting into applause. Tears blurred Olivia's vision as she took her bow, feeling a surge of validation she hadn't known she needed. She didn't win the grand prize that day, but one of the judges, a renowned composer named Victor Langston, approached her afterward. "Your music has soul," he said, handing her his business card. "I'd like to mentor you." Under Victor's guidance, Olivia's world expanded. She juggled motherhood and music with relentless determination, teaching piano lessons by day and composing by night. Victor connected her with small gigs and recording opportunities, and slowly, her work began to gain traction. But for Olivia, success wasn't about fame or fortune. It was about proving to herself, and perhaps even to Daniel, that she could thrive without him. Years passed, and Olivia's name began appearing in music circles as the creator of compositions that struck deep emotional chords. By the time she received an invitation to perform at Carnegie Hall, she had already achieved more than she ever dreamed possible. Yet, as she stepped onto that legendary stage, her heart still ached with memories of the man who doubted her. The lights of Carnegie Hall burned brightly, illuminating Olivia as she stepped onto the stage. She had dreamed of this moment for years, yet the reality of standing there felt surreal. The air was thick with anticipation, the audience murmuring with excitement. Olivia took a deep breath, steadying her trembling hands, and approached the grand piano. Her composition, titled "The Echoes of Us," was deeply personal, a piece she had crafted during sleepless nights of heartbreak and perseverance. Every note, every crescendo, every delicate pause was a reflection of her journey, a journey marked by pain but defined by resilience. As her fingers hovered over the keys, her thoughts momentarily drifted to Daniel. She hadn't seen him in years, but echoes of his parting words still lingered like an unresolved chord. "You'll never make it, Olivia. You need to face reality." But now she was here, at Carnegie Hall, the pinnacle of every musician's dream. The first note resonated like a bell, piercing the silence. The melody unfolded gently, reminiscent of a river winding its way through a desolate landscape. The audience was spellbound as Olivia poured her soul into the performance, her emotions cascading through the music. Pain gave way to hope, despair blossomed into triumph, and the final chord soared like a phoenix rising from ashes. When the last note faded, the room erupted in applause. Olivia rose, tears streaming down her face, and bowed deeply. She had done it. She had claimed her place among the greats. Backstage, Olivia was greeted by a flurry of congratulations from fellow musicians, critics, and admirers. Yet, amidst the celebration, a familiar face caught her eye. Her heart faltered for a moment. There he was, Daniel. He stood awkwardly by the doorway, dressed in a worn suit that seemed out of place among the elegance of Carnegie Hall. His hair was thinner, his shoulders stooped, and his once confident demeanor had been replaced by a nervous energy. "Olivia," he said, his voice tentative, as if testing her reaction. She stared at him, her emotions swirling in a storm of anger, pity, and curiosity. "What are you doing here, Daniel?" "I heard about your performance," he said, shifting uncomfortably. "I wanted to see you, to congratulate you." Olivia crossed her arms, her posture defensive. "After all these years? Why now?" Daniel hesitated, his eyes dropping to the floor. "I made mistakes. I thought leaving would make my life better, but it didn't." He looked up, his gaze pleading. "You've built something incredible, Olivia. I see that now. I'm proud of you." Her laugh was sharp, almost bitter. "Proud of me? You walked away when I needed you most. You left me to struggle, to raise our children alone, while you chased your version of happiness." Daniel flinched at her words but didn't argue. "I know I don't deserve forgiveness. I needed to tell you I'm sorry." As much as Olivia wanted to dismiss him, Daniel's presence dredged up old wounds she thought had healed. She excused herself, needing air to clear her head, and stepped outside into the crisp night. The city hummed around her, a stark contrast to the stillness she craved. She leaned against a railing, staring out at the glittering skyline, when a familiar voice interrupted her thoughts. "Ms. Harper." It was Victor Langston, her mentor and the man who had believed in her when no one else did. His silver hair glinted under the streetlights, and his warm smile carried an air of fatherly concern. "Victor," she said, forcing a smile, "I didn't expect to see you out here." He studied her for a moment, his gaze perceptive. "You're troubled. Does it have to do with the man I saw backstage?" Olivia sighed, nodding. "Daniel, my ex-husband. He showed up out of nowhere tonight." Victor's expression darkened slightly, but he quickly composed himself. "What does he want?" "I don't know," Olivia admitted. "Closure. Forgiveness. Maybe he's just curious to see what became of me. Victor placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. Whatever his reasons, remember this. You are here tonight because of your strength, your talent, and your perseverance. No one else. Don't let his presence overshadow your triumph. His words settled over her like a balm, and Olivia felt a renewed sense of clarity. She thanked Victor and returned inside, determined not to let Daniel's reappearance derail her night. The after-party was a whirlwind of accolades and connections. Music industry elites clamored for a moment of Olivia's time, praising her performance and expressing interest in future collaborations. She accepted their compliments graciously, but her mind remained preoccupied with Daniel's sudden appearance. Later that night, when the crowds had dispersed and she was finally alone, Olivia sat at the piano in her hotel suite. The weight of the evening pressed heavily on her, and she let her fingers wander over the keys, playing fragments of The Echoes of Us. As the melody unfolded, she realized something profound. Her music was no longer rooted in the pain of abandonment. It had transformed into something greater, a testament to her journey of healing and self-discovery. Daniel's departure had been the catalyst for her growth, but it no longer defined her. The following morning, Olivia returned to her apartment, where Noah and Emily greeted her with hugs and excitement. They had watched her performance on TV, their pride evident in their shining eyes. "Mom, you were amazing," Noah exclaimed. "Does this mean you're famous now?" Olivia laughed, ruffling his hair. "Something like that." As she looked at her children, she felt a deep sense of gratitude. They were her greatest accomplishment, the reason she had fought so hard to rebuild her life. No matter how far her career took her, they would always be her anchor. That day, Olivia made a decision. She would confront Daniel one final time, not to reopen old wounds, but to close the chapter for good. Days passed after Olivia's performance at Carnegie Hall, but the rush of excitement from that night began to fade, replaced by the hum of everyday life. She was back in her apartment, back to being the mother of Noah and Emily, just as she had always been, except now the world knew her name. Her music, her story, her triumphs, everything had changed. But one thing remained unresolved: Daniel. He had attempted to reach her several times in the days following the performance, each message a fragile attempt at reconciliation. Olivia's phone buzzed with his name, but she ignored it. She knew she couldn't move forward until she addressed the past, so she arranged a meeting. Olivia sat at a small table in the coffee shop where she and Daniel had shared many quiet moments before their lives had unraveled. The familiar hum of conversation and the clink of coffee cups only heightened her tension. When Daniel walked in, it was as though time had folded in on itself, the years between them evaporating for a brief moment. But there was no magic in the air, no reunion or rekindled affection, only a quiet reckoning. "Olivia," Daniel said, his voice uncertain as he slid into the seat across from her. "I've been thinking a lot about everything, about us." "Let's not waste time, Daniel," she said, her voice firm. "You had your chance to talk when you left. Now I'm going to talk." He nodded, deflating a little under the weight of her words. "You're right," he said, looking down at his hands. "I don't deserve forgiveness, but I needed to say, sorry, for everything. I was selfish. I was scared, and I didn't understand what you needed. I was blind." Olivia's eyes narrowed. "You weren't just blind, Daniel. You were cowardly. You left me with nothing. No explanation, no apology, nothing. I had to rebuild my entire life, not just for me, but for our children." "I know," Daniel said softly. "I see that now, and I can't take back what I did. I thought it would be easier to just walk away, to find something else. But I was wrong. I've lost everything trying to chase a life I thought would bring me happiness. And I see now that it's you who's built a real life, a legacy." Olivia remained silent for a moment, absorbing his words. She could feel the anger rising again, but she pushed it down, focusing instead on the reality that Daniel had never truly understood her or the strength she had found in herself after he left. "I built my life, Daniel," she said, leaning forward, her voice steady but resolute. Not because of you, but in spite of you. You left me with nothing, but I found my way. I didn't need your approval. I didn't need you to tell me I could make it. I did it myself. And I did it for me, for Noah and Emily. Daniel's eyes filled with tears. I see that now. I see how strong you are. And I can never undo the harm I've caused. But I hope you know I regret everything. I'm sorry for not believing in you. Olivia took a deep breath, the weight of the years pressing down on her chest. I've carried that pain with me for so long, Daniel. I used to think that if I could prove something to you, if I could just make you see me, really see me, that it would make everything okay. But it won't. I've learned that. And now I need to let go. Daniel nodded slowly, the finality of her words sinking in. I understand. I'll never be a part of your life again, will I? No, Olivia said gently. But it's okay. I'm at peace now. I've got everything I need. My children, my music, and myself. As she left the coffee shop, Olivia felt a strange sense of release, as if she had just closed the final chapter of her life. She walked down the street, the early evening sun casting long shadows, and she realized something. She was finally free. She had worked so hard to build a life for herself and her children, and that was all that mattered. No apology from Daniel could take away the strength she had gained. That night, she sat down at her piano once more, the weight of the past no longer dragging her down. She played a new melody, one that felt lighter, more triumphant. It was a song of rebirth, of letting go, of accepting that some things were never meant to be. She hadn't just earned her place in Carnegie Hall. She had earned her peace. Months later, Olivia found herself on another stage. This time, the prestigious Hall of Fame induction ceremony. The spotlight illuminated her as she stepped forward to accept the highest honor a composer could receive. Her name was now synonymous with groundbreaking music, and yet, standing before the world, she felt an odd sense of detachment. It wasn't the fame she had sought. It wasn't the accolades. It was the truth she had come to understand. Her worth had never been about winning awards. It had always been about her journey, the one she had walked alone. The audience was rapt, waiting for her to speak, to hear her words of gratitude. And when she opened her mouth, it wasn't just to thank the critics, the fans, or her mentors. It was to tell the world her truth. Tonight, she began, her voice strong but tinged with emotion. I stand here as a testament to the power of perseverance. For years, I struggled with the pain of loss. I doubted my ability, my worth, and I let the fear of failure consume me. But over time, I learned that the only thing I could control was my own resilience. She paused, her gaze sweeping across the audience. I wrote my most famous symphony, The Echoes of Us, during the darkest time of my life. It was born from a place of heartbreak, but it became something much greater, a symbol of strength. And while the pain of my past will always be a part of me, it no longer defines me. It was not the man who left me, nor the people who doubted me, who shaped my success. It was me. And I did it for me. The room was silent. Olivia's words lingered in the air, a quiet but powerful statement. And as she finished her speech, her gaze briefly met Daniel's, who had somehow managed to make his way into the audience. He sat there, his face pale, eyes wide with realization. And for the first time, Olivia felt nothing but pity for the man who had once been her world. As Olivia left the stage, the applause rained down on her. She had earned it, not just from her peers but from herself. She had become a symbol of resilience, a woman who had weathered the storm of betrayal and emerged stronger. Her music would live on, but more importantly, so would her legacy. Her children, Noah, now in high school, and Emily, who had just started learning the violin, were waiting for her backstage. They hugged her tightly, and she smiled, knowing they would never know the depths of her pain, only the triumph that had followed. "Mom, you were amazing," Noah exclaimed. "You're a legend." Olivia laughed, hugging him back. "No, sweetheart," she whispered. "I'm just a woman who refused to give up." And as she walked out of the Hall of Fame, arm in arm with her children, she realized that the journey was never about proving anything to anyone. It was about proving something to herself. And now she had. Dear viewers, thank you for watching. If you like this story, please subscribe to our channel to receive more stories every day. Share with us what you think of this story.